brand new banners for the second half of version 5.4 have been revealed. So we're going to talk about the 5 stars, the 4 stars, and the weapon banner to help you decide if these banners are worth wishing on for you. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. We are closing in on 100,000 subscribers, so if you want to support the channel, please subscribe. It really helps me out. Thanks a lot. All right, starting off with Furina. I have already made 2 very recent videos on Furina, an updated Furina guide, Ask Jello, where I answered all your questions about Furina, so you can go check that out. And I also made an in-depth Shelonen versus Furina video yesterday, because Shelonen is speculated to come on the following patch after Furina. So if you're interested in those types of questions in particular, then those videos are definitely worth a watch. As such, I won't really cover Furina like super in depth on this video, but suffice it to say, she's an extremely strong character. She's best in slot with Novelette, and a lot of people have Novelette. So getting yourself Furina or C1 or C2 Furina are all what I would consider very worth it. One thing I will say is I do not just generally recommend most people go for Furina. I really recommend you watch, for example, the Shelonen Furina video, or even my other video back here, the Genshin 5.4, to see what kind of teams that she will work on for you. Especially, I did in my Shelonen versus Furina video, I outlined each DPS and how well they work with Furina, if they need Furina, if she's worth wishing on. So yeah, and in general, I will say for most people, her C1 is very much worth it. If you're interested in making your team stronger and you already use Furina or you plan on using Furina, her C1 is very worth it. Her C2 is also very worth it, and her weapon is pretty much not worth it at all. So that is basically Furina. For Wriothesley, I really don't like Wriothesley very much these days. He is best played as a cryo driver for Melt Moika, and that's just not a thing that Wriothesley players want to do. You want to see your Wriothesley do damage. He basically has a few teams that people like playing. There's Melt stuff that uses Burning. There's Melt stuff that just uses Shelonen Bennett Xiangling. And then there's Melt stuff that uses Shelonen Bennett Moika. Shelonen Bennett Moika is the best version, but you have to do a specific combo for it. I did cover it in my Moika video. It's 5 normal attacks into a charge attack. That is Rise. Obviously, people also like to do freeze stuff. They like to do Furina stuff. They do go together like fine. It's just that freeze is not very good. There's no damage amplification. And so I really hope that one day they buff the freeze reaction, because at this point it could really use it. I'd like to see them totally rework it so that it works on bosses. Maybe it doesn't freeze them, but it applies maybe a debuff. Maybe you get resistance shred just from having freeze. I just thought of it. That's what it should be. You should get like a 20% or something resistance shred for applying hydro and cryo on enemies. I've just saved freeze. You're welcome. However, so you can send me the check. But yeah, I am expecting cryo to get a buff at some point, but I don't recommend pulling characters based on buff. Wriothesley is definitely a character that you get if you like him, and he's going to be fine, and you can do stuff with him, and you can clear with him and all of that fun stuff. But he is underwhelming compared to the meta DPSs of today, especially with characters like Moika just completely obliterating the DPS ceiling. Especially since his best team uses Moika, it feels bad for Moika to do more damage with her burst than Wriothesley does throughout his whole rotation. It's just absurd. So Wriothesley, should you get his C1? His C1 in pre-release, people thought it was like mandatory for his kit, and it does make his kit a lot more fun. You can do a lot more enhanced charge attacks, but it is far from mandatory. It's not actually a crazy damage boost, because you can still do charge attacks even without them being enhanced. And so it does make him more fun to play. It makes him way more cool, but at C0, he is fine. It is a better damage increase to go for his weapon over his Constellation 1, so something to keep in mind. And yeah, that's the 5 stars. Looking at the 4 stars, so we have Mika, Chongyun, and Charlotte. The cryos have been unleashed. The cryos behind the gate. Charlotte hasn't ran until since Furina's very first banner, which is absolutely nuts that it's been that long. I really quite liked Charlotte back then as a healer for Furina, and if you have C4, you can start running Thrilling Tales in a lot of teams instead of basically having to run Favonius Codex. And being able to run Thrilling Tales actually makes her like viable on a bunch of teams that she was more of a damage loss for. Like, not that she replaces Bennett, because Bennett is obviously broken, but at least it gives you some consolation that you get a bit more healing, you get the cryo, and you get Thrilling Tales. At least it was something. You can do, like, people have done Arlecchino Melt stuff in the past. They obviously pair her with Furina. I feel like there's not a lot of crazy good teams that Charlotte is on. I think the best team right now is Novelette. They put Charlotte on there for the freeze reaction, and Novelet, Shilonen, Furina does plenty enough damage, or Novelet, Kazuha, Furina does plenty enough damage that you can easily run someone like Charlotte to get freeze and have extra quality of life as you're fighting, AoE abysses. And then you don't even need C4 because you don't run Thrilling Tales on that team. And yeah, that's what people will often run Charlotte with. I think that's easily her most popular team. Mika, some people run Mika with Wriothesley and Furina because he heals and provides attack speed. Some people do that with Wanderer. Obviously, some people use him with Eula or Fremine. He's basically not used in any good teams right now. Since Shilonen, Mika and Charlotte have mostly lost their use cases. I don't know what you want me to say. Cryo is not in a good spot right now. This is just the facts. Of course, again, overworld or fun teams or whatever, perfectly fine to use them. They've still got strengths. I have a guide for Charlotte. It's not bad in the state that it's in. It's like obviously outdated because we have way better characters nowadays, but it's not bad. The ideas are all right in the guide. And Mika, I don't think I ever made a guide because even with Eula, he doesn't synergize all that well, and giving attack speed it's fun, but it's not that great. I know attack speed is like really good in other genres of games, but in Genshin it's just not that good because hit lag is still a thing, which is the time after you hit the enemy, and like there's a time that attack speed doesn't affect, which is just unfortunate. And then Chongyun's sort of he's pretty bad, but he's an underrated DPS, like a burst crowd DPS. You can melt his hits, and with Shilonen, Bennett, Furina, he's actually pretty solid as a melt DPS. Why would you do that? Well, just because you like Chongyun. It's not something I'd ever recommend as like a good value character or something like that. You do need a C6. You want to give him, Furina's weapon, or not Furina's, Moika's weapon, and it can clear. It can get some pretty decent times. If you saw my my usage video, this one, I compared the usage rates versus my own clear times, and the Chongyun team cleared not that bad. So Chongyun, everybody. But yeah, overall, like looking at this banner, I feel like they're all misses in terms of meta supports. None of these are characters that people hope for. For sure, I love Charlotte. She's got an amazing design and great personality and great animations. She's super cute. I'd be happy to get her, but she's not a meta pull, and the other two are maybe even less meta pulls. So overall, it's a really big miss of a banner. It's really unfortunate for Furina watchers, especially if you're going for constellations, to just get more and more of these characters as opposed to good, like better or newer characters. It's a bit of a shame, and yeah, so there's that. Weapon banner is also looking, well, it's not looking that great because Furina's weapon is pretty bad. Basically, until you get Constellation for Furina, it's not worth going for her weapon. I know that sounds ridiculous. You can get away with it being good on double Hydro teams or Raiden teams, but other than that, Furina's weapon, and even in that case, Furina's weapon, it's so much worse than her first two constellations. It's only about equal to her third and fourth constellation, and her third and fourth constellation give other benefits. And with Constellation 4, finally you get energy refund. You can use her weapon properly. So I definitely don't recommend going on this weapon banner for Furina wanters. For Wriothesley wanters, I mean, his weapon's a pretty good upgrade, but it's hard. Like, it's only one pity is the nice thing. It's not two pities anymore. So if you want to spoil your Wriothesley with a weapon, it's not the absolute worst. Hopefully you get some Favonius Sword. At least Furina's weapon is a crit damage stat stick. It should be an upgrade for, like, compared to a lot of free-to-play weapons, but it's definitely not something to be excited about. Favonius Sword, Rust, Sacrificial Fragments, Dragon's Bane, and Sacrificial Claymore. Sacrificial Claymore, it's pretty good on Dia. I don't know if anyone else uses it right now. Sac Frags is pretty good on a bunch of characters, most notably Sucrose, but I think there's some others that use it that aren't coming to mind right now. Dragon's Bane, like EM, Raiden, EM Toma, Hu Tao, can be used on Arlecchino Melt, if I'm not much mistaken. No, Hydro or Pyro, so it is no good on Melt teams. That's too bad. If it was good on Melt teams for like Melt Arlecchino, that could be pretty cool, but unfortunately, no, it has to be vaporized. That is unfortunate. And then Rust, basically only good on yoimiya, and it's very good on yoimiya, but who's using yoimiya and wishing on this weapon banner? That is ridiculous. And Favonius Sword, obviously an incredible sword. I have tons of copies on my account and I'm happy about it, but do not wish on the weapon banner for the 4 stars. They are at best a consolation prize and at worst a huge annoyance as you get all Rusts and no Favonius Swords. At least for, I guess, on the positive side, at least you can get copies of Charlotte with Furina. I feel like a lot of people like Charlotte, and a lot of people want some copies of Charlotte, and she's like comfy and nice to use, and she heals an absolute metric ton, so that feels nice at least. So at least, like, you have a couple healer options. It's stupid that they're both cryo. And as dumb as it is, Bennett Xiangling, this would have been like a good time, a good synergistic time for Bennett Xiangling, because Wriothesley wants both Bennett Xiangling, and Furina Bennett Xiangling is a great core for, like, every character. Maybe not a great core, but it's like a solid core for every character. So as dumb as it is, I kind of would have liked to see Bennett Xiangling Charlotte on this banner, and then I would have been happier with it. Obviously something cooler like Kuki, or I don't even know. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you want to get Furina, if you want to get Wriothesley, don't let these hold you back. Right? Don't let the 4-stars hold you back from getting your Furina or your Wriothesley or your C1. It's getting good 4-stars is basically a myth, and stay off the weapon banner unless you're a really dedicated Wriothesley main. And if you were really into Furina teams, you could really consider C1 or C2 because it really makes a difference. I won't be going for it because I'm trying to test everyone at C0 except for like my very favorite or like very select characters, but I'm trying to mostly test at C0. And her Constellation 1 really does make her, like, it is a huge bonus for her. It's a huge increase. So that's it. Let me know your thoughts. Subscribe if you've been enjoying the videos. And if you don't want to do that, that is totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.